A little over a year ago, I purchased a Rivian R1T. To me, Rivian is one of the most exciting electric brands out there, trying to make a dent like Tesla has. And I was excited to give their product a real try, experience a great electric truck with very cool features, and review it on this channel. Overall, it has been great, with the exception of charging infrastructure. I've talked at length about the fact that third-party charging networks can easily make for a stressful Rivian road trip, which is the opposite of the Tesla supercharger experience. Luckily, this will be changing next year as brands, including Rivian, partner with Tesla on their supercharger network. In any case, a week ago, my Rivian suddenly broke down, and we could only drive 13 miles per hour. But the issue at hand is what's even more surprising, so let's get into it. As I mentioned in the intro, our Rivian R1T has been great. Our road trip up and down California was not a great experience, and we haven't taken this truck past its own range a single time since, after being scarred from that experience. Since then, Rivian has expanded their own, more reliable adventure network, so I am eager to give that another go, but the main issues we've had were small buggy type things. The built-in GPS needed a lot of work at first, as it would constantly recalculate, take us to the wrong destination, or get entirely confused as to where we are, suddenly jumping forward and back. Each time this would happen, it would recalculate the route based on our new, quote, position. Build-wise, we had a loose panel under the car passenger side that happened without hitting anything, some rubber seals got loose in the front vent, and the gear tunnel wouldn't properly release when initiated from the screen. We also had a rough alignment on the front panel. That's also fairly common. Then our tonneau cover breaks sometimes, as most do, and Rivian is finally starting to install their updated version of this in customer cars. We've had 2 recalls, which were both pretty simple fixes. For these, Rivian Mobile Service came to our house and fixed the issues within a few minutes. One had to do with the steering fastener, and the other had to do with the seat belt. Both were physical recalls, but Mobile Service made these easy to fix. Otherwise, it would have been around a 2 or 4 hour round trip for me to get to service. My closest Rivian service centers are fairly far, even though I live in LA, and that's a problem you face with a brand new company shipping their first vehicles. The good thing about Rivian, though, is that like Tesla, they are very software based. So many of the issues I mentioned earlier, like GPS and such, were fixed automatically throughout the last year. We just installed the latest update. But then came Rivian's update snafu. Rivian pushed out a software update that ended up being halted immediately because it was the wrong version. A bug in the update bricked people's infotainment systems, and for those that excitedly installed it immediately, they could drive but couldn't use their screens fully. At first, Rivian thought this, quote, may require physical repair in some cases. Luckily, after a day or so, Rivian was able to fix that with a follow-up update. I wasn't affected by this simply because I didn't click that update notification. That right there pointed to a fear that many have with a software-based car, and when mine broke, it ended up being a questionable issue as well. Over the past few months, we would drive our Rivian normally, and all would be good. Then the next morning, we'd get in and it would give us these error messages. First was the one I feared most, vehicle battery issue, service truck soon. This is clearly pointing to the large, high-voltage battery pack underneath the truck, and most likely the most expensive part of it. Of course, I'm well within warranty, but still, why is my Rivian having a battery issue 1 year in? Furthermore, it would say system fault detected, performance limited, service may be required. Then we'd get to wherever we were going, get back in the car, and these error messages would be gone. Not only did they not pop up, but I would check notifications, and it was as if they had never happened. There's no record of them besides the photos I took. Well, phew, the issue solved itself. Then a week later, I get in and it's back. One thing I noticed is that it always seemed to happen when it was cold outside, but I can't imagine that that's actually a cause here. So this would happen off and on, where we'd get in the car, get where we were going, get back into the car, and it was completely fixed. But this finally began coming up each time we got in the car. Simple enough, except that for Rivian's service, there are 2 centers near-ish to me, Costa Mesa and El Segundo. When I tried scheduling service, it simply said there are no appointments available for Costa Mesa. Over in El Segundo, the first available appointment in that time was March 21st. Right now, it's April 12th. So to get this intermittent issue fixed, which impacts my battery and the performance of my Rivian, it was going to be a 4-month wait to get into service. I submitted it, and then I was in the process of phone tag with Rivian to schedule an appointment in Costa Mesa. In the meantime, we just drove knowing our battery had issues and our performance was limited, but we simply had to wait for service, until my wife suddenly texted me, truck just stopped working, and I had to pull into the nearest parking lot. Every possible error message showed up on screen, and she pulled over to do a reset. She did a soft reset, attempted a hard reset, but then it let her know that performance was limited and the maximum speed she could drive was 13 miles per hour. Considering she was a few miles away from home, that was a problem. So she called Rivian's Roadside Assistance number, which is available through the app, and they proceeded to tell her to do a walk-away reset. Essentially, walk away from the truck for 30 minutes, allowing it to fully reset itself, and then come back and see what happens. Luckily, she had time and was near a place to eat some lunch, so she did that. Remarkably, this worked, and she was able to drive the truck home from there without being limited to 13 miles per hour. Definitely one of the weirdest solutions I've ever seen, though. Not a soft or hard reset from the steering wheel, but walking away and not using the truck for 30 minutes to fix itself. One other alert did pop up then, though, by itself: tire pressure monitor not working, service immediately. Clearly, there was still an overarching issue at hand, and we weren't going to keep driving this around without service, so they did get us into service right away. I'm definitely glad to see this, and figured there had to be a priority system in place when a car is malfunctioning this much. The next day, Rivian sent a tow truck that took it from our house to the Costa Mesa Service Center. And again, it was pretty funny since there was no problem with the car at the time it was being picked up, so just drove right up the ramp. Yet something would surely pop up soon. The issue popped up on Thursday, and Rivian towed the truck on Friday. So they set us up with an immediate rental car, and then said that if the truck was going to be required for a longer period of service, they would try to get us a Rivian loaner. For the time being, though, we had a Nissan rental car. Worth noting that Rivian did provide for us to have a larger vehicle, but we just took this compact car since it was only going to be a couple days. Rivian said they would call us on Monday or Tuesday with an update, and come Tuesday, they'd let us know that the car was ready for pickup. They also mentioned they were able to fix a few other small issues that I was going to have fixed on the original ticket that I submitted for service sometime in March. Their notice came in a notification through the app, and then they sent over an invoice for service. Everything was covered at no cost to us, including the tow, which was contrary to what I've heard other people experience, so I was glad to see that. On the service invoice, they fixed the underbody panel I mentioned earlier, checked tire pressure as is required, and then addressed the issue with the gear tunnel door. Their cause was left gear tunnel trim panel in need of adjustment, right gear tunnel door operating normally. Gear tunnel doors will not open when vehicle is locked. The last sentence is a bit funny to me, especially since the issue is that the door would open halfway, clearly when unlocked, but I guess they likely deal with some very obvious issues at service. Anyways, then comes the final big one. It outlines the issue we had been having. Interestingly, just noting the intermittent messages we were getting, but not being limited to 13 miles per hour, but then outlines the cause. This was a bit surprising to me. I had a full battery pack replacement on my 2020 Model Y, and I've had other bad luck with vehicle purchases in the past, so I would not have been surprised if I got an entire battery pack replacement here. However, it simply says, the recent alert on your vehicle is caused by a software corner case, and we communicated issue to respective teams. Rivian will continuously improve the software and send out updates to your vehicle when available. High voltage fault during time frame stated. No high voltage warning lights on or issues found after over-the-air update. For correction and remedy though, it does say HV battery assembly, other labor 1 hour. So it seems they inspected the Rivian high voltage battery and ultimately found no issue. The issue was in software, with the vehicle thinking that there was an issue. Performance was limited, ultimately all the way down to 13 miles per hour because of a software bug. This was specifically a corner case that they haven't encountered before, and now they will take this information and apply it to all other Rivian vehicles in future software versions, so that others don't have the same issue. I tend to try to see the positive in things or see the glass half full, so overall this makes a lot of sense to me. The R1T has software built in to detect an issue and prevent further damage if there were an issue happening. Here it just happened to get it wrong, but Rivian did handle it very well. The Roadside Assistance number was able to assist immediately with that initial walk-away reset that allowed us to drive normally again and get home. Then Rivian got us towed into service the following day, even though normal appointments were backed up for a while. The issue was sorted out within 4 days, and the worst part of the whole experience was driving down to Costa Mesa to pick up the car. Hardly a problem at all. Then this information gets fed back into Rivian's software ecosystem to further improve every vehicle in their fleet through software updates. Especially given the fact that the R1T is the very first vehicle Rivian has ever shipped, and my VIN is just under 11,000, it makes a lot of sense. There are kinks to be worked out, and they are doing exactly that. On the customer-facing side of things as well, they handled things incredibly well. Now our Rivian is back to normal, and I'll keep an eye out if this issue ever pops up again. On the glass half empty side of things, I can see how this raises concerns. Mainly it seems that the car software was wrong and limited our ability to drive based on nothing. So if you are worried about software issues in a car from a new company, this somewhat confirms that. This is an example of one, and Rivian had another big one a few weeks ago. As always though, that's a small data set. I still love the R1T and think Rivian is doing great things. Here, I'm glad we were able to help them learn and diagnose a corner case. I'm also glad it was a quick fix and that it didn't cause any issues for us personally. For some though, it could have definitely put a dent in a week or a road trip and would be doubly frustrating when they learned that there wasn't actually an issue. My personal opinion though is if you're buying a Rivian, you should at least ensure that you have a base knowledge of what you're getting into. Many still ask me, who makes that truck? And I say, Rivian. And then they go, yeah, but who actually makes it? Rivian. They're new enough that most people don't think they could actually make the cars themselves. So you should be prepared that it's a new car from a new company that could have some roadblocks. Overall though, I'm incredibly impressed with how good this car is. If I had no context and you told me that this was a new car from a new company, it would be very impressive. That does bring us to the issue of service though. The real reason this became an issue big enough to require a TOTA service is because Rivian service wasn't available to address my concern for a full 4 months. They want you to schedule through the app and there wasn't availability for a long time, plus my issues were intermittent. Tesla has a reputation for bad service, but they are many years further along than Rivian, especially with the Model Y and 3, so they have had a chance to build out a lot more service centers. Right now, if I try to book service for my Model Y, there's the option of mobile service, which has worked for smaller issues, and then an in-person appointment is available pretty quickly in my area. Of course, this will always vary depending on where you live, and it's a part of a growing process for a company. As I said, Tesla is further ahead here, as they have sold many more EVs than Rivian has. They've had to build more service centers and have had the time to do so. I see new service centers pop up fairly often, and this is something I'm excited to see Rivian expand. I'm seeing their charging network expand, so much so that when you wait a few months and check again, it can really look like an entirely different map. Eventually, this will happen and will have to happen with Rivian service centers. Some customers have had really rough experiences with Rivian service in the past, but it does seem to be improving in some cases. My personal experience was great. I just wish it was easier to get in earlier before this issue got worse. One thing I will note is that there is the possibility that Rivian knew whose car this was and knew I'd be making a video about it, so they ensured it was quick and easy. It's always something that I do keep in mind, but it really didn't feel this way. My wife handled all the communication, but who knows, maybe they have certain VINs flagged. I hope that any customer whose Rivian had this issue would be brought into service immediately. What has your experience been though? Do you own an R1S or R1T that has needed service? What was your experience like? Leave a comment below to let me know your thoughts. In the meantime, if you want to see my full review of the Rivian R1T prior to this issue, you can check out that video linked up here or in the description below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.